You've been taught to be kind, expressive, and available, but still you're ignored, ghosted, and left wondering what went wrong. The problem, you're playing by rules designed to make you weak. Today, I'll show you the real game, the hidden rules women never tell you, but always respond to. Master these, and you'll never chase again. They'll come to you. Rule number 1. In every human interaction, there exists a silent hierarchy. Beneath smiles, compliments, and gestures lies the primal language of power. It speaks through posture, tone, presence, and most of all, consequence. The man who understands this does not compete for attention. He draws it to himself by the force of his gravity. For women, attraction is rarely rooted in superficial traits alone. It is rooted in how a man shapes the environment around him. Power, not words, becomes the seduction. When a man enters a room and people shift conversations, quiet glances are stolen, tension rises. That is the language of power. It is not about being loud, flamboyant, or overly assertive. True power is silent. It is the calm of a storm waiting to strike. It doesn't announce itself, it simply is. A powerful man doesn't need validation because his actions already speak for him. His choices carry weight. His movements are calculated and his silence is deliberate. This silent power drives curiosity. It creates desire, and in women it triggers a biological pull they themselves may not fully understand. Power breeds certainty, and certainty in a man is intoxicating. A woman wants to feel secure not just in the sense of financial protection or physical safety, but emotional leadership. She seeks the man who needs nothing because he becomes the man worth having. His life is not centered around her presence. Rather, her presence must qualify to fit into his world. This flips the usual dynamic on its head. When a man exudes power, women don't evaluate if they want him. They begin to wonder how they can be chosen by him. This power is not limited to status or wealth, though both can amplify it. It begins internally. A man with a mission, direction, and control over his reality radiates power in every gesture. He does not talk excessively because he knows that words without authority are cheap. He does not over-explain himself because he knows that to explain is often to submit. He moves like someone who knows where he's going even if others don't yet understand the path. This is not arrogance, it is command. In this context, attractiveness becomes less about physical features and more about psychological dominance. A woman might be drawn to a handsome man, but she is obsessed with the one whose eyes seem to see right through her, the one who doesn't laugh nervously, who doesn't ask for permission, who listens more than he speaks, not because he is passive, but because he is measuring, watching, calculating. That's the man who cannot be toyed with. That's the man whose approval must be earned, and earning it makes it far more valuable than anything given freely. Too many men operate on the belief that to attract a woman they must flatter her, compliment her, show vulnerability and openness. While those traits may gain appreciation, they rarely ignite obsession. Women are not drawn to men who follow them. They are drawn to men they cannot fully understand, men who seem like they could walk away at any moment, not out of cruelty but out of self-possession. The man who has options does not beg, and the man who never begs, paradoxically, becomes the one most wanted. To embody power is to become a mirror that reflects back a woman's uncertainty. She begins to question her worth in your eyes. She seeks to close that gap. The psychological tension created by your indifference becomes the very fuel for her interest. It is this dynamic where she leans in while you stand still that reverses the common game. Suddenly, it is not you chasing beauty, it is beauty chasing you. This does not mean cruelty or manipulation. It means embodying a presence that forces others to calibrate around you. You do not need to control others directly. You control yourself so fully that others instinctively respond. Power does not ask. It commands without force. It seduces without effort. Understand this. A man can have wealth, good looks, even charm. But without power, he will still be beneath the man who possesses silent, unshakable control over himself. Women intuitively detect this. They may test it, challenge it, but ultimately they submit to it. They do not crave perfection. They crave the tension between risk and stability, danger and control, and nothing creates that more effectively than a man who can walk away without flinching because he stands for something higher than approval. Power resides, desire follows. It is not a coincidence. It is biology, it is nature, and it is yours to command. If you have the discipline to master yourself first, the world will follow, so will she. Rule number 2. Desire does not thrive in abundance. It feeds on absence. The human mind is not wired to crave what is easily available. It is drawn to what it cannot fully have. Scarcity is the most powerful psychological lever when it comes to attraction. And yet most men sabotage themselves by being too available, too eager, too present. In doing so, they strip themselves of the very value that would make a woman pursue them. When something is constantly within reach, it becomes ordinary, predictable, dull. But when it vanishes without warning, when it cannot be grasped at will, the mind begins to obsess, searches for closure, it seeks resolution. This is not just a romantic phenomenon, it is a psychological truth. What we cannot possess fully, we idealize, and what we idealize, we pursue with a rational intensity. Scarcity triggers imagination, and imagination is far more powerful than reality in the game of attraction. A woman doesn't dream of a man she sees constantly groveling for attention. She dreams of the one who appears at moments, leaves an imprint, and vanishes again. The one who doesn't answer right away. The one who doesn't need to be constantly seen to remain unforgettable. His absence becomes louder than another man's words. His silence echoes in her mind louder than compliments, and his unpredictability injects tension into her thoughts, forcing her to wonder, what is he doing? Who is he with? Does he even think about me? Scarcity creates a void, and the void invites fantasy. The man who is always present gives no space for mystery, and therefore gives no fuel to imagination. But the man who withholds his presence is not forgotten. He becomes mythologized. His image is shaped not by who he is in constant exposure, but by who he becomes in moments of absence. This is where true obsession is born in the mind of the woman who can't predict your moves, and therefore can't stop thinking about them. Most men confuse availability with loyalty. They believe that being constantly present proves their value, when in reality it only exposes their need. Neediness is the death of desire. It signals a lack of options, a lack of self-control, and most of all, a lack of status. A man who is too available communicates that his time holds no weight, that he has nowhere better to be, that his attention is cheap. And when something is cheap, it is never desired. Scarcity, on the other hand, signals abundance elsewhere. It tells her that your world is full, that she must earn her place in it. This dynamic creates a crucial psychological inversion. The man who is hard to get becomes a challenge. And women do not value what comes without effort. In fact, the more effort she must expend to reach you, the more valuable you become in her eyes. She begins to invest emotionally, mentally, even physically. And once investment is made, detachment becomes harder. She is not just attracted now, she is entangled. Scarcity does not mean ignoring her entirely. It is a strategic dance, appearing just enough to ignite interest, then disappearing to let it grow. You leave traces, not trails. You respond when it suits you, not when expected. Your time is not an open buffet. It is an exclusive invitation. She doesn't get to consume your presence whenever she wants. She must qualify for it. This is how obsession is built, not by overwhelming her with affection, but by creating a subtle lack that she feels compelled to fill. The modern world promotes the illusion that instant communication and constant connection are desirable. But psychological truth predates technology. No matter how fast the world spins, the rules of human attraction remain ancient. A man who resists the pull of constant accessibility becomes rare, and rarity breeds intrigue. Intrigue becomes fascination. Fascination, if carefully sustained, becomes desire too powerful to ignore. Scarcity also introduces the element of unpredictability. If she always knows what you're doing, when you're free, how you'll respond, you become emotionally flat. But if your time is fragmented, your replies delayed, your schedule unknown, she begins to chase not because you are playing games, but because you are living a life not dictated by her attention. You are not orbiting her. You are your own sun, and she begins to revolve around you, trying to stay within your light. When a man masters the power of scarcity, he no longer needs to convince or explain. His distance does more than his presence ever could. His silence speaks louder than words, and every moment of his return becomes a reward, not an expectation. The shift in dynamic is total. She is no longer the one being pursued. She becomes the pursuer. Not because you tried to make her chase you, but because you became something she could not easily possess. And what cannot be possessed becomes impossible to forget. Rule number 3. Every interaction between a man and a woman is a subtle negotiation of power. Not through overt words or physical dominance, but through the invisible architecture of the frame, the context that shapes how both people perceive the moment. Whoever controls the frame controls how the game is played, how it's understood, and most importantly, who leads. The frame is the battlefield before the battle begins. The one who sets it wins before even making a move. A weak man walks into a conversation hoping to be liked. He reacts. He adjusts. He mirrors. He softens his tone and measures his words based on how the woman responds to him. What he doesn't realize is that by doing so, he's already lost control. He is inside her frame, her world, her definitions, her expectations. In this position, he can only respond, never lead. He becomes reactive instead of directive, subordinate instead of sovereign. Women do not submit to men who submit to them psychologically. They submit to the man who imposes his reality so powerfully that she wants to be part of it. The frame is not just about conversation. It's about energy, presence, and mental dominance. A woman tests constantly to see if she can shake your reality. She disagrees not always to debate, but to probe for weakness. She challenges not always for argument, but for insight into your emotional control. If you allow her to dictate the tone, the topic, the rules of engagement, you cease to be a leader. You become a participant in her narrative, and a man without his own narrative becomes disposable. The man who controls the frame does not get flustered. He does not over-explain himself. He is rooted in his world. You and he does not seek validation for it. He makes statements, not questions. He sets the rhythm of interaction, and she follows not because she's forced to, but because she feels the pull of authority wrapped in calmness. A strong frame doesn't push, it invites surrender without demand, and surrender, when voluntary, becomes desire. Frame control also determines what is acceptable, what is desirable, and what is respected. If a woman tests you with drama or manipulation, and you respond with anger, pleading, or explanation, you've entered her frame. If you meet her emotional chaos with steady eyes, minimal words, and composed detachment, she is forced to recalibrate. She realizes she's not the dominant force in the room. Your refusal to be moved becomes its own language, a statement that you are not a man who dances to emotional fluctuations. You are the stillness she cannot disrupt, and therefore cannot ignore. Leadership in relationships, like leadership in politics, is never granted. It is seized by those who dare to define the rules. If you are not defining the interaction, you are being defined by it. If you are not leading the emotional tone, you are being led by hers. Women are not repelled by assertiveness. They are repelled by indecision, by doubt, by the man who looks to her for direction. The man who needs permission to speak freely, act confidently, or walk away when disrespected has already placed himself beneath her, not by force, but by lack of presence. A powerful frame is built from internal conviction. It cannot be faked. Because women are attuned to inconsistency, they feel when a man's confidence is a mask, and they probe until it cracks. But when a man speaks with purpose, when his body is relaxed and his gaze unwavering, she finds herself being drawn into his world, into a frame she did not create, but now cannot resist. Her reality begins to shift to match his. This is where attraction becomes submission, not through demand, but through psychological dominance. Even in silence, the frame holds. The man who can sit in silence without rushing to fill it shows he's not ruled by social anxiety. The man who lets her talk without reacting to every word signals emotional self-mastery, and the man who disagrees calmly, even boldly, shows he doesn't fear rejection. These are all micro-expressions of frame control, and they matter more than any scripted line or rehearsed tactic. The man who sets the frame controls more than the conversation. He controls perception, attention, and emotion. He becomes the reference point. She compares other men to him. She wonders why she can't shake his influence. His reality becomes the one she wants to live in because it is firmer, clearer, and more grounded than hers. And in a world of emotional chaos and uncertainty, a grounded man is the most magnetic presence she can find. Rule number 4. In the silent war of desire, the most powerful man is not the one who expresses the most love, nor the one who makes grand gestures of affection. It is the man who remains emotionally controlled, whose feelings are not easily swayed, and who holds himself as a fortress against emotional chaos. While others are dragged into the whirlwind of romantic intensity, he remains composed, watching, weighing, and waiting. Emotional detachment is not apathy. It is strategic restraint, and in the world of women and seduction, it is a weapon more potent than charm or passion. Most men bleed emotion at the first sign of attention. They confuse openness with strength, vulnerability with value. They speak too much, feel too deeply, too soon, and collapse the mystery that could have bound her to them. In trying to be emotionally transparent, they dissolve the very tension that makes a woman chase. Desire is not born from emotional exposure. It is born from distance, from the mystery of the unknown, from the inability to predict what you feel, what you think, and how much power she truly holds over you. A woman wants to feel. She seeks emotional highs and lows. But if you give her all your emotion too quickly, she grows bored. The thrill is gone. The puzzle is solved. The man who has not mastered his emotional state becomes a toy, a predictable figure she can move at will. The man who can look her in the eye and reveal nothing he doesn't choose to, he becomes an obsession. She begins to seek his emotional center. She wants to unlock him, and in that quest, she invests herself deeper than she ever would for a man who wore his heart on his sleeve. Emotional detachment means you are never too high, never too low. If she pulls away, you do not chase. If she tests you, you do not react. If she cries, screams, or retreats into silence, you remain unaffected. Not because you are cold, but because you have mastered the internal discipline to never be moved unless you choose to be. This unshakable calm is what separates the ordinary from the powerful. It signals that you are not dependent on her approval nor swayed by her moods. You are centered in yourself, and that center cannot be breached. This creates an imbalance of emotional investment. While she spirals in doubt, overanalyzing your words and wondering what you feel, you remain a question mark. And in romance, The question mark is always more powerful than the exclamation point. Certainty ends the chase. But when she cannot fully access your emotions, when she senses you could leave at any moment without collapse, she leans in. She tries harder, she opens herself more fully. Her desire becomes tied to the enigma you embody. Emotional detachment also gives you power in conflict. When most men argue, they raise their voices, get defensive, and try to prove their point. But a detached man listens without flinching. He speaks slowly, precisely. He does not need to win because he does not feel threatened. His very calmness frustrates and fascinates. She may scream, accuse, or withdraw, hoping to ignite reaction. But when none comes, her emotional weapons turn inward. She begins to question her tactics, question herself, question why you are not responding like other men. This psychological tension makes her feel that you are stronger, higher in value, and ultimately less available. And the less available you seem, the more she is pulled toward you. The root of this power lies in self-sufficiency. The emotionally detached man is not numb. He simply does not depend on anyone else to define his emotional reality. His validation is internal. His mood is not determined by external affection. This creates a fortress around him, an impenetrable wall that both protects and elevates him. While other men crumble when love is withheld, he remains unaffected. While others beg for attention, he disappears into his purpose. While others plead to be understood, he speaks less and observes more. To be emotionally detached is not to suppress emotions, but to master them. It is to feel deeply yet show selectively. It is to possess the emotional range of a king and the restraint of a strategist. Women are not drawn to the man who pleads for connection. They are drawn to the man who values his solitude so much that any connection must be exceptional to be accepted. She doesn't want to be your emotional crutch. She wants to prove herself worthy of breaching the fortress. In a world where most men are desperate to be felt, to be seen, to be understood, the man who withholds becomes a relic of power. He stands out, he radiates strength, and even if he says little, even if he shows less, his absence of emotional dependence becomes the very reason women crave his presence. Rule number 5. Power in relationships is not maintained by affection. It is maintained by perception, and the most potent perception you can create in a woman's mind is this: she is being treated like the most special woman in the world, while silently understanding that she is not irreplaceable. This contradiction, the illusion of exclusivity layered over the unspoken awareness of disposability, is the sharpest double-edged sword in seduction. It keeps her emotionally invested, constantly striving and subtly insecure in a way that fuels her attachment to you. The mistake most men make is choosing between two extremes. Some men treat women like queens, pouring affection, validation, and emotional loyalty into every moment of interaction. These men are quickly taken for granted. Their devotion, while sincere, lacks mystery. It shows its entire hand too soon. And once a woman knows she is the center of your world, she begins to explore her options outside of it. Others go the opposite way, cold, indifferent, emotionally distant. These men may evoke curiosity for a time, but they fail to create emotional safety without at least a sense of being special. A woman will eventually retreat to someone who gives her that illusion. The man who makes her feel rare while showing that she is ultimately replaceable becomes psychologically dominant. She experiences both elevation and uncertainty. One moment she feels like the only woman alive who has access to your inner world. The next she senses that if she were to withdraw or disrespect you, you would move on without hesitation. This dynamic is not about cruelty. It is about maintaining leverage. It is the leverage that keeps her effortful, attentive, and emotionally hooked. To create this paradox, your actions must be deliberate. You show her kindness, attention, and charm. You let her taste the experience of being chosen, but you never let her forget that she was not your only option. Your compliments are rare, and when given they are precise, not desperate. You may tell her she's beautiful, but never in a way that sounds like awe. You may show desire, but never hunger. You may offer your time, but not your full availability. These are not empty gestures. They are calculated imprints designed to draw her deeper while never letting her feel fully secure. Security, while comforting, is the enemy of passion. When a woman knows exactly where she stands, her imagination dies. But when she senses that her position is maintained by her behavior, by how she speaks, how she acts, how she treats you, then she becomes invested in sustaining it. She stops coasting. She starts working to stay in your favor. She becomes more feminine, more attentive, more seductive. All of this flows from one silent message you communicate at all times. You're special but not essential. This balance must also be seen in how you live your life. You must appear as a man in motion, a man who has options, purpose, and direction with or without her. She must witness that your life is rich, filled with movement, friends, other women who desire you, or ambitions that consume your time. She must feel your presence as a gift, not an entitlement. The moment she begins to believe that your life revolves around her, the game shifts and you lose. Even in intimacy, the message must be clear. You enjoy her. You are not obsessed. You connect, but you do not collapse. You care, but you are not controlled. This is where true dominance resides, not in being emotionally distant, but in being emotionally sovereign. You can feel love without becoming enslaved by it. You can enjoy her affection without needing it. You are the center, and she orbits around that center, not the other way around. In social settings, your subtle signals matter even more. If she sees you talk to other women with confidence but without desperation, she senses your worth is publicly recognized. If you speak of your past without bitterness but with authority, she realizes other women have desired you, but none have tamed you. If you move through life with silent discipline, high standards, and a calm detachment from validation, she begins to internalize that her access to you is not automatic. It is earned and must be maintained. Eventually, this dynamic takes root in her subconscious. She feels the pull to be perfect in your eyes, not because you demand it, but because you subtly imply that someone else could always step in. She is not terrified of being replaced, but she is aware of it, and that awareness drives her behavior. She becomes more giving, more emotionally engaged, more willing to meet your standards because deep down she knows she is in the presence of a man who could walk away, not out of spite, but out of principle. This is the highest form of psychological control, not overt manipulation, but calibrated perception. You are not threatening abandonment, nor are you rewarding obedience. You are simply being the kind of man who values himself so highly that no woman, no matter how beautiful or unique, can ever become your entire world. And yet, in treating her like a queen while never depending on her for your kingdom, you inspire her deepest desire to remain your chosen one, even if she knows she was never your only one. In a world where most men are taught to please, to prove, and to pursue endlessly, the true master of influence operates differently. He does not chase validation. He cultivates gravity. He understands that power in relationships lies not in emotional indulgence or constant availability, but in controlled mystery, strategic detachment, and the ability to shape perception without ever revealing his full hand. You've now uncovered 5 hidden rules that separate the forgettable from the unforgettable. These aren't tricks. They are psychological principles rooted in the understanding of human nature, how power, desire, and uncertainty weave together to create obsession. The man who leads without demanding, who sets the frame without debate, who withholds emotion without coldness, and who treats her like royalty while making her feel replaceable, he doesn't ask for women to beg. He creates the conditions where they need to. This isn't about manipulation, it's about positioning. It's about embodying the type of man who naturally commands attention, devotion, and loyalty, not because he demands it, but because he is a rare force in a world full of weak negotiation. Play by these rules not with arrogance, but with quiet conviction. The result isn't just attraction. It's power that endures even in silence.